Former Speaker of the House Bronwyn Bishop and former Liberal Senator Hollie Hughes. Great to see you both. Now listen, former Prime Minister Scott Morrison has spoken about net zero amid the coalition's kind of, I guess, climate civil war that's going on. Morrison said net zero at any cost on any rigid timetable is not policy, it's just ideology. Yeah, OK. Pressed on this stance by Sky News host Sharri Markson last night, this is what he had to say.
Should policy seek to achieve the goals of affordability, scalability, reliability and lower emissions? Yes, I think it should. But should that be done by destroying your economy and doing it at any cost in an unrealistic time frame, particularly in the short term? No, I don't. I never have.
Hollie, I'll start with you. I mean, this just seems to be more covering over the cracks, arguing this way, arguing that way. There was a meeting earlier today. The coalition had a meeting to discuss and everything. Seems pretty simple to me. It ain't something you can finesse. You either abandon net zero or you embrace net zero. Is this all going to end in tears, Hollie Hughes?
Look, I think what we need to see from the coalition is an abandonment of legislated targets. We need to get that legislation out of the way. We need to see things like the safeguard mechanism taken off the table and get rid of that in legislation. There are lots of things that have been put in place in this Labor government's race to renewables that is causing significant damage to our economy across the board, whether it's in agriculture, mining, or just the day-to-day budget of everyday Australians. It is absolutely crippling our country. And if we're serious about talking about bringing industry back, the first thing we need is affordable, reliable power. And the first thing we should be taking is unreliable power out of the grid, and that includes both wind and solar. They can be batteries, they can be used in ways that don't impact the grid, because the coal-fired power stations need to keep burning regardless of whether they're putting into the grid or not. It's causing lots and lots of problems when it comes to stability moving forward. And perhaps, though, some of these ideologues won't be able to see it until they can't see anything at all, thanks to blackouts.
OK, Hollie, but I'm going to come back to that because to me, it's an awful lot of words being used there. Tony Abbott won in a landslide by saying, stop the boats. He didn't say, let's re-legislate this and make it this and do that. You abandon net zero. That's what you do, in my opinion. But Bronwyn, I want to come to you. But first of all, here's what Shadow Energy Minister Dan Tehan said earlier today. This was after that meeting I mentioned.
We had a number of colleagues here this morning, I think 25 or 30, who all came together because they want to have this conversation. The deep concern in the room is that we're just going to see energy prices increase exponentially under this government. There is so much that we've united on that it is going to make it a lot easier for me to be able to come up with a position which is in Australia's national interest.
Bronwyn, I'm hearing nothing, and we'll come back to Hollie in a second, but I'm hearing nothing that fills me with confidence that the Liberal Party understand that if they want to win the next election, they have to dump net zero. 3 words.
Yes, they do. But they also have to explain what that means. So you've got to say, we'll keep the coal-fired power stations going. We will stop rewiring the nation, i.e. duplicating the grid. That's costing $1.3 trillion off budget. That's debt in addition to the $1 trillion on budget. We can't afford all of that and then defend the nation. It is just not possible. So we have to say that cheap electricity, we can't afford to subsidise every goddamn industry to keep it in the country. So we have to abandon net zero, and we have to say we will use our resources in this country to deliver cheap power. Listen to breakfast radio every morning. They'll tell you, 5% from wind and 6% from whatever and 80% from coal. The reality is that this country is running on coal, and indeed it will continue to do so. So unless truth is embraced, and it's a simple, straightforward statement that people can comprehend. I understand what Hollie is saying about legislation, but people don't.
You ditch net zero, and that's a political win, and it's a win for the entire nation. But I want to ask you both about something else which I found extremely disturbing, and that's a two-word slogan: joy division. Now, that two-word slogan, the moment I saw that photo of Anthony Albanese coming down the steps from a very successful international meeting, he knew he would be photographed, he knew he would be there, wearing a T-shirt with the words joy division. Now, I am a great rock and roll fan, as viewers know. I immediately almost threw up when I saw that image. I was sickened, Bronwyn. What did you make of it?
I looked at it in disgust. Disgust is the only word I can think of.
And I wholeheartedly support Susan Lee. Have a listen to this, Holly.
Why are your colleagues supporting your call for an apology from the Prime Minister over the T-shirt?
I don't take a backward step on my comments, and I don't know that people realise that the Prime Minister, in wearing the T-shirt, was well aware of the dark history behind the words on the T-shirt.
Why aren't they supporting your call?
We do need to go.
Was it a captain's call?
So, Holly, I'd love your thoughts, and also your thoughts on some of your former colleagues, such as Tim Wilson, and even Susan Lee's deputy seemed to be reluctant to condemn Albanese over that repulsive T-shirt. Holly.
This is a man who's supposed to be the leader of our country. There's an expression, dress for the job you want, not the job you've got. Well, maybe we need to send him back out on the road and he can go DJing again. It was absolutely a disgraceful misjudgment. I think Susan Lee's 100% right on this. I do think there's a couple of my former colleagues who like to get their names in the headlines just for disagreeing, not because they've got anything of substance to say. I think Susan's 100% correct to call it out.
Now, Bronwyn, just before we go, Prince Andrew, they're going to go for him. They've stripped him of every title. They've stripped him of this and they've stripped him of that. What did you make of the King's actions towards his younger brother?
I think he had no choice but to proceed. Once those emails started to come out, he was placed in the position where he had to act. And he is acting as the king, not as a brother. And kingship does bring with it different responsibilities. In terms of the king and his actions, I really don't think he had any option.
Hollie Hughes and Rowan Bishop, always great to chat to you both.